Imagine yourself letting go of any tension, if there is any present in you. You might want to experiment with sitting in a position that you can be relaxed in without falling asleep. You might want to experiment with having both of your feet flat on the floor. Anything that helps you so that your attention is not drawn to your body, but instead set free to roam. Imagine yourself becoming even more relaxed by imagining your muscles letting go. You might want to relax your neck, or perhaps your hands, or your shoulders, or your belly. Imagining each one letting be, letting go, relaxing. In the same way, you might want to experiment with your thoughts, noticing them in a kind and friendly way, letting them soar, letting them move wherever they want to, letting them be, letting them drift. In the same way, you might want to experiment with giving a kind-hearted attention to your breathing. Let your thought gently travel to your breathing so that you can watch it as it breathes in, reaches the crest at the top, and breathes out. Just noticing with a relaxed, kind-hearted attention. And you might want to experiment further in this way. With every breath that you breathe in, count 1. And as you exhale, silently say to yourself, 2. And again as the breath comes in, 1. And 2 on the exhalation. In a kind, interested, friendly way, notice as you keep on counting the 2 numbers. And if your attention wanders, notice it in a friendly, kind way. And simply come back to your breathing and start again. And I invite you now to notice that at the top of the next breath, there is a pause, a moment of no movement, to just observe it for a little, let it linger before you exhale. And in that way, to begin building the bridge that leads you to the activity of the room, so that your eyes can begin to open in the next few moments. And you can make yourself available in a friendly, gentle way to the sounds and feeling and activity of the room. The meditation we just encountered comes from Meditation, a Month of Practice, March 2013, and was beautifully set up for us. So let's give some finger waving so as not to disturb the beautiful piece. Yeah, thank you so much for that. This book, if you don't already have it, you can download it for free from our website, www.cslsr.org, in the section Quick Links, Files for You. Or if you prefer to have somebody else print it out for you, you can pick it up at our bookstore today for, I think, $2. Either way, it's got directions for you to invite you to various kinds of meditations, like the breathing one we just did. We just did it for a moment, but you're invited to take it further yourself. And also it has a place for you to keep record of your practice. And I know for me that's a way to engage, because if there's a box for me to check, I'm more likely to do it. So you can do this and then go on to the next week's practice along with your community. The topic for today in this month of meditation as a spiritual practice is I am love. And when I read that topic, I couldn't help but think of the ceremony that the children in our youth and family program perform every Sunday. Now, some of you I know that because you volunteer in the youth and family program, and others of you have got children that go through the program. And the way it works is the children go through the ceremony with a kind of call and response where one child leads and the others follow, using felt candles to do this candle lighting ceremony. And the point of it is to draw the children's attention to certain key attributes of divinity. Now, I know that which is divine and endless and eternal cannot be contained or limited by any one attribute or name. So we use these attributes merely to point in the direction of eternity and attributelessness, to help the children think beyond their immediate life to a more expansive idea. And we use the qualities life, love, light, peace, beauty, joy, and so on. And whether you are a young person or a more advanced in age person, using one of these qualities as the focus for your meditation is a very beneficial practice. You can take any one of them and spend the day with the thought, I am beauty, and see what it works in you. The idea behind this ceremony and today's message is quite simple, very simple and direct. And I'll state it first in the negative. It goes like this. When we don't give our attention to something, it recedes into the background of our awareness. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's no longer there. It's just not appearing to be there. Now, in the affirmative way. When we give our attention to something, it moves from the background into the foreground and comes into focus, and then it shifts into that position that I call available. It comes into focus. One of my favorite examples of this is the story I tell about a friend of mine who once, when driving around, pointed out to me a car of a particular color and particular model. And ever since that moment, the world seemed to be filled up with that car of that color. Suddenly, my awareness was attuned to noticing something that up until that moment hadn't been available to me. I learned something from that. Now, when I want to experience divinity through the filter of one of these attributes like love, light, peace, joy, power, beauty, what I can do is start the morning off by giving attention to it for just a few minutes. So I'm priming the pump, I'm setting the direction, and I can fully expect to start noticing a world a little more populated with that experience. And the way the youth and family program does it. First of all, the children identify the quality or the attribute of the divine. And then the next step is they identify themselves with that quality. Very simply, very straightforward. So the one child leading it will say, God is life. And the rest of the children will say, I am life. The leader will say, God is light. And the rest will say, I am light. God is peace. I am peace. And today we are focusing on the one that comes right in the middle. God is love. I am love. There are just directions, these words. Look this way is what we're saying. Just like the wait staff in a restaurant will say, walk this way. That's what we're doing. We're taking the invitation to go down a path. And today the path is one of the most beautiful of them all, love. And the phrase is, I am love. And when I think about that, I can't help but thinking about one of America's most profound and accomplished teachers of New Thought, Catherine Ponder, who writes extensively about love and also about prosperity. And I brought some of her words along with me, and it's a bit small for those at the back, so those at the front, won't you read with me, and then we'll all know what it says. There are those people who read self-help books and take numerous success courses, who get the idea that mind power is all there is, that if they just use mind power sufficiently, everything will come their way. And for a time, it may seem right. They can produce tremendous results through the power of thought and through using its techniques. The time usually comes, though, when they realize that mind power is not enough and they begin to spin their wheels spiritually. Well, there you have it. That's the whole message. See, some people, and I have been some of those people, some people try to reduce spiritual practices or the teaching of the center to a mental technique of positive thinking. And they do so by getting rid of any reference to that which is the cause of all things. And in doing so, they make it a purely secular practice that goes something like this. What can I achieve in this world by mind control? Through claiming and affirming and concentration and direction. Well, actually, it turns out quite a lot. So remember, I was one of they end up focusing all of their efforts on acquiring things, getting results, and obtaining possessions without equal and appropriate attention and focus on acquiring understanding, developing compassion, and obtaining kind-heartedness. And I think what happens is there's an element missing in the recipe. Something's missing from the recipe. And the thing that's missing is the heart connection, love. And when that's missing, then all the activities, all that's left is willpower. And with willpower alone, the tools and practices can perform, but only so long as the willpower is sustained, and when the willpower stops, so does the program. I mean, imagine these things. Affirmation without love. Service without love. Spiritual mind treatment without love. Meditation without love. What is it? When I try to use my mind to get somewhere, to acquire something, to rearrange the world, and love isn't in my heart, it turns out I can often choose a wrong direction and go for it, and sometimes even get it. But more often than not, what I do is I cause a whole lot of trouble. Because I become self-centered and not heart-centered. Catherine Ponder describes a loving mind as a flowing mind, as a generous mind, as a forgiving mind. And this is what she says about it specifically together. And a flowing, forgiving, and generous mind is highly attractive to all the things, experiences, and people that are necessary to create heaven on earth. A loving mind is an attractive mind. Oh, yes, it is. A loving mind is a powerful mind. Oh, yes, it is. And you can do a survey for yourself. Check it out. Do you prefer to hang around people who have loving minds or people who have spiteful minds? Do you prefer to hang around a person who has a tendency to forgive or a person who has a tendency to hold grudges? Do you prefer to hang out with people who are generous or with people who are stingy? You see, you can just do a survey, find out where your tendency is, and then call that your nature. I grew up in a very, very rough neighborhood. When I was young, poor and rough, lots of crime, lots of violence and crime. And all the kids in my neighborhood used to love to hang around my grandmother. And funny thing is, she wasn't, intellectually very learned woman. She wasn't very well read. She didn't have like a huge vocabulary. And in fact, she could be quite dogmatic about behavior and politeness and strict about manners. The question was, what's the attraction? She was loving and kind and generous. Quite simply that put her in a position so that she had more power over and more influence over and more obedience from these children than both parents and police did. The rough children, the dangerous, boisterous, rebellious children of the neighborhood would do as she said. And I never saw her raise her hand to anybody. And I rarely heard her raise her voice. We will do incredible things for love. One of my teachers said to me, Edward, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And they will do incredible things for love. And you can't fake it. My grandmother is still my guide. Sometimes I think about her. I think about her being loving and kind when it's time for me to get my mind back on track. I think of her doing some of those loving things, and in my mind I say to myself silently, I am that. I am that love. I identify with it. Even today now when I see something loving happening in the world, somebody doing something kind, I say to myself silently, I am that. I identify with it. That's me, I say. And I was explaining that to somebody who wanted to establish more loving kindness in their life, and she said, yeah, but what if it's not me? And I said, well, I'm training my mind to think that it is. So I can confuse it enough that it starts to identify with that. I just keep on telling it, that's me. Until it becomes normal. You try that. Try that the next time you witness something that resonates with you. Identify with it and just say silently, I'm that. And that's the way I bring it forward from the background into the foreground, into focus, so that it can lead the way. There are days I go through the day saying over and over again like a mantra, something like I am love, over and over. very much in the same way that I recommended to you last week to say, may I be filled with loving kindness, may I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease, may I be happy. And so many people have written to me and talked to me and told me about the impact of that practice. Just in 1 week. This is a letter from somebody. It goes like this: Dear Edward, so I got this letter from MCU, which is Monkey Chatters Unanimous. And the monkeys are mad at me. Because I wake up in the morning with, may I be filled with loving kindness, may I be well, may I be peaceful and at ease, may I be happy. And I direct the same thoughts to my partner and to several other people on my mind, and the monkey chatter doesn't interfere. And I've never experienced that. Usually, they take over the conversation before I even get out of bed. I was driving up 101 today, the writer says, and a beamer cut across my path to exit. May he be filled with loving kindness. May he be well. May he be peaceful and at ease. May he be happy even though he's an idiot. And I bless him on his reckless path. And I heard nothing from the monkeys. They usually want to make an issue of it, but I had already let it go. Then, as I was driving to work this week, I repeated, may I be filled with loving kindness, may I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease, may I be happy. Several times I repeated, and each day I noticed was filled with ease and surprises and wonder. No monkeys getting in the way, no false imaginations, no negative expectations being played out and realized. After reading at night, I would crawl into bed next to the man I love and close the day with, may I be filled with loving kindness, may I be well, may I be peaceful and at ease, may I be happy, and send it again to him and to others on my mind and fall asleep with it peacefully. No chatter. Quite simply, it works. Poor monkeys. Simple and direct. It works. It works like magic. No, it works like love. That's how love works. You're being invited to practice that. Start the morning off with some observing of your breath. Then choose a statement to set the direction. I am love. Repeat it. Set the motor going. Get going into the day. And you can fully expect to be writing letters like that. I have such confidence in this. You know, one of the commitments I have is I don't talk from this pulpit about anything that I don't do. I have such confidence in this. You can fully expect beneficial results. And when I practice in this way, and what I mean by that is I mean dwelling on a statement like, I am love. You know what? It keeps me from falling into bad habits. And then there are plenty to fall into, don't you know? Like the habit of being out of step with my own heart. Or being too cold or disconnected. Or being sloppy and lazy with other people's feelings. When my love is out of focus, I get sloppy. This is what Catherine says, together with me. When you find yourself tempted to resist, resent, or criticize people, situations, or life in general, that is the time to use the love concept. By holding to thoughts of love, you remain harmonious as you bless the situation rather than add to the confusion. See, when love is out of focus or in the background, I add to the confusion. I get sloppy in what I think and say and do. I notice that. About 15 years ago, a friend of mine stopped talking to me without any word. And I was very troubled by it. I was traumatized by it because there was no closure, and I told myself it was unjust. And I carried the wound around and would tell as many people who would listen. And I remember talking to a mutual friend about it, and I was explaining how that was an unjust thing to do, to just withdraw friendship, and how that said something about the person's character and their inability to. And he interrupted me, and he said, "It's funny, you should talk like this about her. Because when she talks about you, she says only the most wonderful things." Oh, see, 15 years later, I remember that. See, I had strayed. I had strayed from the love concept. It's that simple. Because the phrase, "I am love," was not in my awareness, it had receded into the background, and I thought it was okay for me to talk in an unkind way, to be sloppy, to be dismissive about somebody who wasn't even present. Now I know. Now I know that even the smallest bit of criticism, just the tiniest bit of gossip, has the power to block my path and my good in a strong, definite way. And I also know that even the smallest amount of loving kindness has the power to open up all sorts of doors that no other force can pry open. And perhaps this is the secret that society is unaware of. That it is that simple. That it doesn't really take that much to use the most amazing power that is as simple as bringing kind-heartedness into focus, and that it connects us to the thing that truly matters, each other's hearts. And if being kind-hearted to the whole world is too daunting a task, then you start with the people that are in your immediate environment, because it's possible, friends, family, neighbors, you can find somebody where there is already a foundation of, well, at least tolerance. You can begin there and do what Buddha advises. Here's what Buddha advises. Won't you read it with me? "In the end, these things matter most. How well did you love? How fully did you live? And how deeply did you let go?" I invite you to breathe in and exhale. Let your eyes close as we take our thought to prayer. And we contemplate ourselves as being kind-hearted with our words and our action and our thoughts. So we entertain the thought of ourselves being gentle-mannered with each other, loved ones, and strangers. As we welcome the idea of ourselves being sincere with our kindness, with our actions, and with our thoughts. As we entertain the idea of ourselves being generous with our attention, with our listening, and with our acceptance. As we entertain the thought of being real with our communication and with our generosity and with our kind-hearted words. And we see ourselves in our mind's eye as being present when we listen, when we think, when we do. As we imagine in our own minds, hearing our words, reflecting our heart. Let us imagine that we know how to be what our heart prompts us to be when we meditate on the phrase, "I am love." I invite you now to take a breath in with me deeply so we can sigh.